Although the structure, the bones and the walls are not living tissue like you and me, more and more I'm seeing architects, designers, technologists thinking of our indoor spaces as living systems. And that's what regenerative real estate is, right? So if we're taking care of our body, but it's within a space, we have to have the living system extend beyond our bodies for us to optimize it for for our health, right? There's no other way, right?
Welcome to the Regenerative Real Estate Podcast, a show about human environments and how they can be used as a force for good. Conversations that educate and inspire people looking for a different way to do real estate. I'm Neil Collins, and on this episode, I'm joined by Michael Donham to talk about his serial entrepreneurial journey with a Wild Orchard regenerative teas and wellness-inspired property technology company RePure. As I'm recording this, I find it no coincidence that half of North America is choked by forest fire smoke. Places like New York City in the Northeast, where they thought that this kind of phenomenon was isolated mainly to the West Coast and the Southwest. This is significant because just as the pandemic heightened awareness of indoor air quality and a focus on well-being, we are still at the very beginning of what I believe will be a surge in interest to create healthy indoor environments as a necessity. If you're a listener to this show, you also know that the sandbox that I love to play in incorporates both the built and natural environments. And it's not unusual to have one show with an award-winning architect, and on the next, we have a regenerative farmer. With our guest, Michael Donham, today, we get the best of both of those worlds because through Michael's entrepreneurial journey, he also plays within the same sandbox. He is part of the Wild Orchard Regenerative Tea Company that focuses on regenerative growing techniques to produce high-quality teas that they are now offering to markets around the world. And Michael is also the founder of the wellness-focused technology company RePure that helps to create healthier indoor home environments. Okay, everybody, we're in for a treat. We have Michael Donham for a guest today. Michael, we seem to be crisscrossing the country here. You said that you're just in Vancouver, and I'm headed up there tomorrow. But it's a pleasure to have you come on the podcast. As we were talking earlier, I find myself identifying on this like real interesting parallel path of business building in the regenerative paradigm. But you also happen to maybe are causing a little bit more brain damage for yourself by trying to run a couple different companies at the same time. But yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on.
It's a pleasure to be with you. The conversation we had before was very interesting, very striking for me. And I thought we had a lot of things in common in terms of our perspective on life, on people. And I'm looking very forward to the conversation today.
Yeah, and this is the fun part for me is that people have asked me, why do you have agriculture people on the Regenerative Real Estate Podcast, and you also have real estate people and developers and financiers? But the agriculture, what's that all about? And I'm like, agriculture and land and real estate, it's all the same to me. And it's how we're treating the planet and our relationship with it. And so it's really fun to have someone that has agriculture and technology and real estate kind of all baked in one in what they're doing. So yeah, I'm really excited about where this is going to end up.
Yeah, I love talking about these things, especially with people like the knowledge that you have about regenerative, why it's important in today's time, the modern times that we're living in. And the common theme across whether it's agriculture, tech, If we have a regenerative perspective, then it's all about people and planet. And one thing that technology is doing, even though I run a tech company, it's destroying a lot of our connection to nature, right? You look at the young generation now. I remember going out playing with beetles, looking at the worms, right? Really, like even at school, going to field trips to the parks and interacting. I mean, that those days are long gone now, right? I mean, of course, people are still making an effort, but the general population is mired in this screen that we have, and it's in front of us most of the day, and it's taking away a lot, I think. And so, even when we look at technology, I look at it as how can we make it so that it brings people back to nature? How can it help elevate their health and their environment? And you ask the question, how is agriculture tech? What's the common thread amongst all of them? It's really about people and planet. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's the kids that are addicted to the screens. It seems like there's more kids that are shirking the screen and going for that IRL, the in real life experience. Maybe that'll be a great trend that the rest of the folks will catch on to. But I want to land on this theme for a second because I've come to realize that regeneration is a thinking technology. And a lot of our work within the regenerative world, it's not no technology, it's appropriate technology. And we're living at such an interesting time of where we're having to figure out like how do we take the best of what is and realize that the Silicon Valley world, it's not going to go away overnight, and it's not pure evil. We're really trying to chart our path forward to figure out how do we live better with each other, and steward the planet, and take a more just approach towards inhabiting home here. And I think with that, why don't we back up and talk about where you came from, and let's find those points along your path that builds into what you're doing today.
Okay, yeah. Anytime we talk about history, it can really get long. So I'll try to keep it compact. So my parents were born in South Korea, and they were one of the first groups. South Korea was a very poor country. It's one of the poorest countries after the Korean War, war torn. Then the split between North Korea and South Korea and the U.S. It's a geopolitical zone, right? So they grew up very poor. It was an agrarian country, mostly farming, far different from what you see today. Uh, but they were one of the first groups to leave South Korea. My mom as a nurse to Canada, my father first to Germany as a miner and then to Canada. But they went to support their family. They went to make money that they couldn't in Korea and send money back to the country. So that's how my parents met in Canada, and I was born in Canada and I grew up. But one story I like to tell people is, when we grew up, the language difference, the cultural difference, it was very difficult to really have deep, fruitful conversations with our parents because there was that huge gap, right? But later on in life, the one story that really struck a chord with me, my father was saying that when he was about 15, the North Korean army with the Chinese were coming down into his town because it was going back and forth between the US and China and Russia. The line was going back and forth, but they were coming down into his town and they were pretty much taking away all able-bodied men to take to North Korea as slave laborers, right? And so when he saw this group coming, he just intuitively he faked that he was crippled, so he just fell on the floor and he pretended he couldn't walk, and they just let him go. So life is in the spur of a moment, it can go left or right. That's what I realized just by listening to this type of story. Because if he never faked that, I wouldn't be here. So it makes you think a lot about life. And even when I was in Vancouver this time, I saw a lot of the places I grew up seeing. Part of me is like, it's nostalgic, right? When you go to your place where you grew up, it's very nostalgic. It really brings up a lot of memories, but there's a tinge of sadness there too, because you just realize that time is passing, people die. So while we're on this earth, from decades ago, the thing that I felt strongly was whatever I do, I just want to make a positive impact, whoever comes into my sphere of, where we can come into contact. And that's kind of how I approached everything with the work that I'm involved in.
That's beautiful. Chart out your kind of professional endeavors. Like, did you always see yourself in an entrepreneurial role?
No. My father was very entrepreneurial, so coming to a country without even speaking the language and just gutting it out, working hard, building businesses and making a life in a new country. So I learned just through osmosis, watching him, helping him on the weekends. That experience really helped me. But I went to school and I grew up loving sports. I just played all different types of sports, ice hockey, baseball, football, right? And I decided to major in kinesiology and I minored in nutrition. And I remember clearly when I decided on those two things, it was, I want to help people live healthier lives, right? Either through exercise and being active or eating right. So that's kind of what spurred my decision to study those things. And then I decided to do a year of education after an education degree. So it's a teaching degree. And I actually taught high school for the first 2 years of my career. And then an opportunity came to join a nonprofit in New York to also do education globally. And I never traveled a lot. And if anyone's listening to this, I really think getting children to travel when they're young to other countries is so invaluable. I didn't have that opportunity, but through my next job, the nonprofit in the US, I moved to New York and I was able to travel to like 20 countries and I saw so much that totally broadened my horizon. And once again, the differences in people, the different cultures, the different languages. But in the end, everyone is a person. That's what I realized through all the travels. Everyone breathes the same air. Everyone eats food and drinks stuff, right? Although it might be a little different across regions, but all of those affect the human condition. And I'm thankful for those experiences because they kind of led to what I'm doing now.
Yeah, and how can we celebrate those differences, the cultural differences? That's the thing. As a young American, I got to travel a lot as well. And I remember at the very beginning, it was like craving for what's familiar. And you're coming from this Western mindset of like, oh, there's the McDonald's or whatever. And how great is that? And quite short-sighted at the time. But now I'm so appreciative of that exposure of really understanding that different cultures and the expression of land and history and all these different factors coming together is expressed in the language and the food and the art and all that. And so it's really a shame, especially coming from North America, where it just seems like it's a little bit extra tricky to really find to have those travel opportunities. What were you doing that brought you to 20 different countries? What was the nonprofit's role?
So the initial job that I took was going into like Latin American countries, European countries, and just setting up education programs for people. And then I was there for about 5 years, 4 or 5 years, and then I eventually moved on to an organic farm. I was there at an organic farm in California for another 5 years. So that also brought another element to my perspective on food and how important it is to think about and know about how the food that goes into your body is grown. That's where I learned a lot about those types of perspectives. And now regenerative agriculture is really coming onto the scene because it's focused on the health of the soil, the nutrient density of the crop, its impact on the climate, the soil having the elevated ability to sequester carbon, reverse climate change. All those things kind of emanated from my time at that organic farm, but now I'm working within it with the tea company I'm involved in.
Yeah, so tell me more about the tea company. What was the genesis behind that? Was the farm is out of South Korea, is that right?
That's right. So I've gotten to know the folks at this amazing, unique 1,000-acre farm. I visited it about 20 years ago. And I've never been, growing up young, we'd always have some barley tea. It's like a cultural Korean popular tea growing up. It'd always be in the fridge to drink. But I was not like a avid tea drinker. But since I visited that farm, I got to know more about the importance of tea, the health benefits of tea. I would drink it from time to time. And about four years ago, a bunch of people, my friends and co-founders, we said, let's introduce this amazing tea outside of Korea. And that's when we started Wild Orchard. And so right now, the Wild Orchard is the first brand to introduce regenerative organic certified teas. It's really the high bar standard for soil health, animal welfare, and farm worker fairness. And it's all about transparency. It's about the health of the soil. It's about the cleanliness of the crop. And I think that's kind of what's going to happen more and more in the future, because you mentioned the younger generation, they are really, really focused on things like climate change, where food comes from, the health aspects of it. So it's an exciting time to be in from that respect.
And I could be way off base here, but from what I know, the regenerative organic certification came out of the Rodale Institute. Is that right? Because they were kind of decrying what was the changing baseline of the organic certification.
Totally. You're totally spot on. So it was not only Rodale Institute, they're based in Pennsylvania. They're like the pioneers of organic and regenerative organic within the US. And then Dr. Bronner's was another co-founder, and Patagonia. So you have really three reputable, everyone has trust in them because the leaders, they talk the talk and walk the walk, right? Because even Mr. Chouinard of Patagonia, he gave up all the shares to preserve his mission. And the statement that he put out was, Earth is our only shareholder. How provocative, right? In this age of capitalism where it's all about making money for the shareholders, this gentleman who cares so much about people and the fate of our planet, he's willing to give up all of his personal stake and say Earth is our only shareholder. So we felt very comfortable tying our T's to this certification. We think it's the high bar standard. And we think it's also important in other ways to be transparent. So right now is harvest season. So if you go to our social media, you'll see pictures of the harvest and how they do it. And it's a great way to learn about tea and the farm.
Paint a picture for me, as I'm not really familiar with tea farms. Is it the same situation that there's just like huge monocrops of black tea that goes to Lipton, and then there's this like small craft organic regenerative, like what does the world of tea look like?
So it's very similar with the industrialized food model that we've had the last 100 years plus, right? So it's turned from let things be grown and cultivated by nature, nutrient density at hand, and cleanliness without chemicals, to how do we extract as much as possible from this plot of land, destroy the soil, doesn't matter, as long as we get quantity and we're able to sell cheap and a lot and make a lot of profit. And who cares about GMOs? Who cares about pesticides? Whether it gets ingested by the body, that's something the big pharma has to take care of, right? And so it's the same across the board. You name the industry, it's going to be relevant, right? So even in tea, you have pesticides, you have the chemical sprayers, and those are the types of teas on the shelf that you see that are not organic. They're able to sell it very cheap, but you're not getting the true taste of the tea. You have chemicals mixed in with it, and your palate has been desensitized by the milk and sugar that's added to it, right? And so people do not really know what a good true tea is, that people have been consuming hundreds of years ago with delight. So what we want to do as a company is bring that back, right? But therein lies the challenge. Everything is hand picked, everything is hand cultivated. So the costs are high. So how do we bring that down? That's the problem we have to continue to solve.
What are some of those strategies? Because I mean, people, whenever you're looking at tea on the aisle of a grocery store, you're looking at the colorful box, and then the price, which is right there below it. And like, is this Moroccan mint or is this green tea, or like, what are the tools at your disposal that you can create strategy around to actually move consumer behavior?
It's the same way why you named your podcast, right? Regenerative real estate. People are so even at the World Tea Expo last week, we were in Vegas. We exhibited there for the first time, and we had a sign, Wild Orchard Regenerative Teas, right? The world's first regenerative tea farm, or something to that effect. And people are walking and they look at it and they start asking, what is that? So it's about an education process. And so when people come to understand that, okay, organic is healthier than non-organic. I mean, I think everyone knows that, right? Because there's no pesticides, no GMOs. But then when we talk about regeneratives and we say the focus is on the health of the soil to maximize the nutrient density and flavor profile from that terroir, then you're going to maximize the potential for that tea that's grown in that soil, right? And so if we can just keep educating people on that, and then also the farm worker fairness aspect, there's so much exploitation of labor across the world, whether it's child labor, women, you know. So it's very important for consumers to support brands who are actually contributing to communities in a fair manner, providing a living wage. And the third part is animal welfare. What's the reason why so many people go vegan? They don't want to see the brutal nature of animal and livestock, like slaughtering and stuff like that. So the animal welfare side is very important. And so the regenerative organic certification tackles holistically all three of those very, very important factors.
What is the business model of a regenerative tea company? And this is again a little bit of my naivete trying to understand how we can support regenerative farms. Is it you're trying to increase acreage and start new farms if your sales support it, or is there unused production that you're not able to capture because you don't have the demand? Like, where are you at with kind of how this can grow?
So that's precisely what we're doing, because we have a 1,000-acre farm, but right now we're utilizing less than 20% of it. So there's so many tea leaves that just fall to the ground. It cannot be turned into a product. It's not a total waste because it's going to the ground and it's contributing to the microbiome of the soil, but still it can be turned into a product and help people live healthier. So really the experiment, and we're betting on this working, is that as we educate people on the value of regenerative, we're about to get into retail, and I talk to a lot of the buyers and I say, think about Wild Orchard this way. It'll be the highest quality of tea, the only prize winning tea that's won at international tea competitions, highest quality of tea that will have ever been on the retail shelf. Don't you want to be a part of that, to bring this type of quality to people, your customers? And although it's a little higher in price right now, if we work together in the beginning and educate people on the value of it, then as we hit, 40, 50, 60% capacity, we can really start to drive those costs down, invest in automation infrastructure, battery powered machinery that can do the work of 10 hand pickers, right? And the other way that I explain it is, listen, if you have an average house and you want the best house, you're going to have to make millions of dollars more, right? If you have an average car and you want the best car, you're going to have to make hundreds of thousands of dollars more. But for us, we want to, if you have an average tea and you want a world-class tea, you only have to pay $5-10 more, right?
Well, to go from tea into real estate, what's the bridge here? How do we get from Wild Orchard teas to RePure?
So yeah, moving from tea. So tea, as you consume it, it's one of the healthiest drinks out there, right? The ability of the polyphenols, antioxidants to reduce oxidative stress. And oxidative stress is caused by environmental pollutants, poor diet, excessive UV exposure, stress levels, right? So RePure, the tech company I'm involved with, is more about how do we address the tremendous amount of environmental pollutants that we're exposed to every day, right? So we spend typically 90% of our time indoors. But if you look at the code in America, there's really no code for ventilation. Air quality, there's no regulations, right? And you bring it out to a broader scope, indoor environmental quality. So not only air quality, water quality, like light quality, sound quality, these are all pollutants. So there's nothing in the majority of homes today that can create a optimal indoor environmental quality that is conducive to elevating our health or protecting our health. So RePure is really like a healthy home operating system, much like a Mac OS or Windows OS, where you can do your word processing. It's a healthy home operating system that will allow sensors, controls, and indoor environmental quality solutions to work in concert with each other, just like our body operates without our conscious effort, to work in the background to make sure that the spaces we live in and work in and spend the most time in is actually healthy for us.
Mm. This is making me think of, I went into a property not that long ago, and the lady was like, "Gosh, don't you just love that new home smell?" That is toxic.
Well, the new car smell, the new home smell, it's addictive too. It's toxic, but it's addictive. It's the reason why people sometimes like to go to the gas station. They like that smell, right?
Oh man, I guess I'm not in that camp. So, and I want to be delicate about this conversation because there's a couple trends that I think that we can identify. We need to go in this direction. Healthy home environments, there is so much to unpack there, but the slippery slope and the underbelly of this is that I'm watching this like wellness real estate trend that is almost undermining itself simply because there's companies that are seeing it as a way to sell more product to people that have the means to do it without actually really caring what is the mission of the company or what is the impact. And so how do you start to look at technology and what's going on in a building or a home to say, okay, here's how we're going to analyze this, here's how we're going to diagnose it, and then here's how we're going to create business verticals to help this? Like how do you start to begin that process?
So you're totally spot on. It's like any industry, healthy home industry is no different. There's, especially post-COVID, everyone is coming out of the woodwork and marketing their product. And now people are learning that it doesn't even work properly, right? So there's a lot of class action suits right now. The way that we mitigate it and bring transparency, just like with regenerative teas, right, is using sensors and data and making it transparent. So the sensors will show your CO2 levels, will show your particulate levels, will show your volatile organic compound levels. And so if you put in a solution that does not work, it'll all show in the data, right? And more and more, even with like artificial intelligence, and right now the big topic of the day is Chat GPT and other stalwarts like Google and Apple developing competing platforms for AI. But in the end, it's going to be about that transparency of data. How well is the solution that you provided me actually contributing to optimizing the indoor environmental quality? So that's air quality, that's water quality, that's sound. Sound is a pollutant too when it goes into our ears. So think about listening to a concert, a classical music, and being next to a highway and hearing like all this sound pollution, right? It's very, very different to the way our brain perceives it, neuroscience, and its impact on our health and well-being. So sounds and acoustics are very important in a home. Smells are very important in a home. Like if I got a dollar for everyone that asks me about candles, right? They say, which candles are good? And I'm saying, there's really not any candles that are healthy, because any combustible activity, you can go better with like natural soy and things like that. But whenever you're burning something, you're sending a pollutant in the room, and houses are being more tightly built all the time. So this is eventually going to make it into your body, right? People use a lot of incense for maybe religious reasons, or to have a nice smell in this space. But when we go into homes and we do testing, the ones that are burning incense, it's the most polluted environments possible. And if babies are in the house, it's going to cause respiratory issues, right? So people just don't know. But if we put the sensors in, even without the solutions in the beginning, then people can get a baseline. Oh my goodness, how can I improve this? Oh, this is red all the time. How do I get it to green? And that's really the future of healthy home, because if you cannot put a measurement on it and transparency, you're just going to be susceptible to all of the snake oil that we're talking about here.
Well, I think we have very similar views on this, but I want to make it explicit. I think there's a cultural hubris where we can say, we're living so much longer than we used to, and we have this miracle of modern medicine and allopathic medicine to really treat anything that does come up. What are your thoughts around where we're at and why this is such a interesting time to be talking about healthy homes?
Well, the latest data shows that the next generation is going to be the first time in hundreds of years where the lifespan is going to decrease from their parents' generation. So it's been going up and up and up, but for the first time in modern history, it's actually going down. And it's not only health, it's suicides, it's depression, it's all of these other factors too. But the fact is, the next generation is going to have a lower lifespan, which is like, no one would guess that, right? If you ask 100 people on the street, they would never guess that the younger generation is going to be lower. On the flip side, cancer rates have reached 40%. 4 out of 10 will have cancer at some point in their life. My mom passed away of cancer. That was another big life event for me. But the thing is, Neil, if you think about 200 years ago, cancer rates were 0.5%. So all the stuff that people are saying, oh, I'm going to be vegan because it's best for my health, or I don't want to eat meat. But 200 years ago, when the cancer rates were 0.5%, people were eating meat, right? Right. So it's really a confluence of processed foods, lack of nutrient density, environmental pollutants, and exposure has skyrocketed. Houses, even 200 years ago, they were built so loose, the ventilation was not an issue, right? So you're not like, if you have chemicals in the house or you're burning something or cooking, it's all like somehow getting out there, fresh air is coming in, right? Even though it's probably colder or hotter in the summer. So if you think about it, we have to analyze and explore exactly what the reasons are for these things, like the 40% cancer rate. But healthy home and sick building syndrome is a huge factor. Like that's documented from decades ago when we started building tighter envelopes. People just started getting sick and sicker because ventilation was not mandatory. And the increase of chemicals was increasing, whether it's carpets, paints, varnishes, finishes. And so it's something that still, even today, the majority of people don't understand. So that's why we want to create an OS. So it'll let people understand, oh, why is this always yellow? Oh, it's because A, B, and C. Okay, I got to change this. It's almost like having a annual checkup at the doctor, right? Because you do that, that's how you know what the state of your condition is, or you discover polyps in your colon, you have to take it out. If you never go to the doctor, you'll never, like, unless you feel bad, you really won't know what's going on inside you. So we want to change that for the home.
Yeah, what comes up for me is a real visceral experience that unfortunately so many more people are experiencing, especially as climate change exacerbates very poor forest management practices to where we have extreme forest fires in the summertime. And it's almost like PTSD flares up for me when you are ensconced in your house and what you feel like you're trapped, because when you look outside, you can't see 20 meters in front of you because the smoke is so thick. And you know that if you go outside, you're going to get headaches. You can't really get fresh air. You've got a kid inside that's like bouncing off the walls that wants to be out and seeing people and doing things. The sky is not blue anymore. And you're going to have to live with this for the next 2 months because it's June and you're trying to figure out whenever the rains are coming back. That's a real deal. And that's not just on the west coast of the United States with forest fires. That is in our major metropolitan areas around the world, from pollutants and industry and cars and all that. So sometimes I think we index heavy towards like, what's the future going to look like? And I'm saying, this is what the present looks like.
Yeah, exactly. And so the reason why we created the RePure Healthy MOS is you can't do anything about those things when you go outside. It's not like you can solve that issue. So at least when you're at home or in your office, you can create an environment that mitigates against that exposure, keep your family safe. We can only control what's in our immediate vicinity. And hopefully if we inspire others to do the same, then it'll have a compounding effect, right?
Before we get back into this episode, I want to share an exciting announcement about a very special opportunity to gather with some of the country's most innovative and pioneering professionals that are helping to grow the field of regenerative real estate. At the end of this summer, we are hosting the second annual Regenerative Real Estate Gathering that will be held outside of Portland, Maine at the Riverbend Farm. This year, our theme is from ownership to stewardship. And not only will attendees get a chance to hear from incredible speakers and organizations doing work around ecological resilience, inclusive real estate development, regenerative design, and advanced sustainable practices, but it is also an opportunity to connect, unwind, and play. This is an opportunity to nurture your spirit, to get inspired, and to connect with incredible people in a unique place that comes with certified living buildings, delicious organic feasts from the farm on site, swims in the rejuvenating Saco River, and activities like yoga and dance. Last year, we were blown away by the wide array of people from developers, architects, investors, planners, realtors, and earth stewards. To find out more about this special gathering, you can find the link in our show notes or go to our website at chooselatitude.com/gathering. I hope to see you there.
Let me ask you, Michael, this is where I get a little bit tripped up, is I can see these trends towards OS systems within our homes and our buildings that can give us a lot more data, and we can make informed technological decisions on what we need to put in there, of air filters and water purifiers and things like that. But there's a book called The Invisible Rainbow, and it's about electrification, and it really scared the hell out of our family, at least, which is saying, we are getting really impacted by electricity in ways that we really didn't think was possible, but that alarm has been really shunned by industry to squelch that. And there's this massive push to electrify everything. Like, we need to get rid of the combustible stove in the house and the furnace. And then there's this like smart home trend with Bluetooth signals and Wi-Fi going everywhere. And cities are putting up 5G routers all across the city, which probably isn't that good for our health either. Like, how do you navigate through this complication and complexity of what's good for us and what's not?
So, like in anything in life, there's no silver bullet. There's no 100% like problem solver, but we do have to do as much as we can. So you're right. Wi-Fi has an impact on our health. Bluetooth, 5G, they all have impact on our health. People don't want to think about it, but more and more studies are coming out. EMFs, the electrical magnetic frequencies coming out of the wall. That's why when you sleep, you don't want your bed near an outlet because you're going to be exposed to that. You want to be far away from an outlet, right? And there's other types of things on your bed, like EMF blocking materials. There are even paints. We outfitted our showroom with EMF blocking paints as well. So none of that stuff will come into the living area. One thing we always recommend in homes is to have it network wired, like fully wired your network so that like even my laptop, it's net wired so that none of the Wi-Fi is affecting our health. Of course, you can't do without Wi-Fi, but where you can, it's that same principle. Where you can and have control, you want to minimize the impacts of these things on our bodies. Where you can't, you just have to do with what's available, right? And so there are a lot of solutions available to minimize the impact of EMFs. It's still very new. A lot of people, even builders, they don't think about EMF. It's all about like air quality, water quality are their top two drivers of healthy home right now. But as we move into indoor environmental quality, I mentioned it before, people are going to start to ask, how do I make sure the acoustics are optimized for my health? The sensescaping, the EMFs, those are all like second and third tier that are going to come up in the future. But right now, air and water are the top two. And then light, circadian lighting as well.
And what are the products? Do you have products that go along with the operating system, or is
Yep.
it just operating system sensors?
So when we say OS, we want a full stack solution. We don't just want to say, here's the sensors. Oh, you're red. Okay, go find your own solution. No, we want to be able to offer the highest performing solution. So when it comes to indoor air quality, it's whole house and point of use air purification. Then there's whole house humidification or dehumidification, depending on which climate zone you live in and what you require. And then there's ventilation, always having that exchange of air from the outside and inside, diluting any chemicals or carbon dioxide, keeping those numbers optimal. So those are the three pillars of indoor air quality. And as long as you have those three pillars, you can create a very health friendly indoor air quality in your space. Water quality, we want whole house filtration that will really knock out the majority of pollutants. And then we want point of use like purification, where it's just going to remove everything and have just pure water. Maybe add some minerals after it's purified for taste, for consumption. So your ice maker, your cooking, your drinking, so that nothing that shouldn't come into your body actually enters your body. So that's water. And then we have circadian lighting. So even in our showroom, in the morning, when you turn on the lights, it's very white. It's actually synced to the sunlight temperature outside. So that wakes you up faster, gets you more alert. And then when you come home later during the night, it's more warm. It's more reflective of the sunset and helps prepare your body for sleep and rest. So those are the three like trifecta: air, water, and light right now when it comes to developers and builders. But all this other stuff we're talking about is going to come second phase, third phase.
Just like the tea company, what do you do in order to differentiate or to create awareness and education? What is it for RePure that you really feel is helping to increase awareness and to create a market for your company that largely I feel like we are in this, we've got to create a market because there wasn't one before this.
Right. So right before we get there, it's all about education and people buying into that. So the key word the last couple of decades was sustainability, right? Even now you hear it everywhere: sustainable packaging, sustainable farming, sustainable this and that. But Sustainability, I don't think fully reflects where we need to be, because when you try to sustain something, it's more of a reflection of trying not to make it worse. Incremental maybe improvements. That's why I always say regenerative, right? Even with our teas, it's regenerative tea. With our healthy home OS, it's a regenerative healthy home OS. We also hear people say net zero, right? So net zero sustainability go hand in hand. We need to be net positive right now, right? For people and planetary health, the crisis that we're in. I talked about the 40% cancer rate continuing to go up. Lifespan is decreasing. Health span is decreasing. So even though you may live 70 something years, a chunk of that, 5-10 years, is going to be you're stricken with a chronic disease, right? And everyone suffers. Your family suffers, your friends, everybody, right? When you're bedridden. So what we want to do is we want to make sure people are putting themselves in a position where their health span meets as close to their lifespan as possible, right? So they live healthy all the way to the day they take their last breath. And so how do we make this market, your question? We go to markets that we feel, so for us, unfortunately, and it's for the tea as well, we're starting in the luxury market. For the tea, it's the Michelin star restaurants, it's the high-end cafes. Unfortunately, for Healthy Home OS, it's the luxury homes through custom integrators who are already in there doing all the networking and the shades and the home theater and the audio. So we're going through that market. And a good model is Tesla model, because when they came out in 2008, they came out with the Roadster. It was 100,000 plus. The people that really wanted it, that believed in the mission for electrification, they're the ones that gravitate towards it. And then he came out with the Model S, and then the 3, and then the Y. And the next evolution is really a $20,000-$30,000 electric car. That's kind of how we envision scaling. Once we start getting a grip into the market, people start to understand the value of it, the quality of it, the transparency they appreciate, then we can start to scale up, reduce our costs, and come out with more mid-market and products that everyone can, the majority of people can enjoy.
Let me see if I can work out a question here. I was on a call with a Stanford professor yesterday, and Tesla came up, and Elon Musk, and he was saying, without Elon having his own equity to put in and capital to put into SpaceX and Tesla and everything else that he's done, those companies really wouldn't have gotten off the ground. Sure. And this is where I'm really interested. We're going to switch into, again, keep going down this regenerative business theme, because I think it's really important to understand where we are in the market and how to develop that. Because on the one hand, you've just got to listen to what capital wants and create a company that aligns towards that. Another is, and I find myself in this, is like, how do we create something that we really feel is true to our mission, but still needing to align capital, to still needing to grow, to make it viable? Where do you find that RePure is? Like, do you find that there is interest from the business world that really wants to seed these ideas, to see these companies create the market and to gain market share? Or do you think it's still a little like pretty early days for investors and capital sources that are like still kind of not quite ready for regeneration?
So for the real estate side, definitely in the commercial sector, there's a lot of capital moving in and out. And a lot of that has to do with a lot of the certification bodies, like the WELL certification for commercial has skyrocketed since COVID. Things like Fitwell, UL, they're all moving towards certifying healthy buildings, right? The residential sector is totally off the radar right now. But I think within the next couple of years, especially the work that we're doing too, and there's some other companies that are entering into the residential sector too for healthy home. I do see interest starting to percolate, and I think in the next couple of years we'll see those. I haven't actively been searching out because we've just been putting the foundation together. We're actually launching our OS in the next month or two. and I want to see how things play out. Like, we're very capital efficient, small team. We have outsourced sales networks that don't require any capital. So I think we have a model where, as long as we're doing it the way we envision, we can be profitable right away, and then maybe meet some people and see what the landscape is about. But for residential, there hasn't been a lot of interest up until, it's all been commercial.
Why do you think that is?
Oh, just the movement. Just the movement is so much bigger. And for example, healthy home certification, it still remains to be seen, even though like International Well Building Institute has come up with a home certification. They're about to launch it very soon, like this year. It remains to be seen if it's going to be marketable. But in the commercial sector, it's skyrocketed in the last 3 years, because without employers showing that they've done something to create a healthy workspace, first of all, remote working, no one wants to go to the office anyways, right? But without any sort of guarantee or some sign that says this is a healthy office space, they're even more reluctant. So employers are investing in it. There's a ROI in it. That's why they're doing it. But for the regular home, what's the ROI? Are homeowners going to do it because they really want to know that they have a healthy home, or is it going to increase in real estate values? That's why they're going to do it. That remains to be seen. So it's in flux right now.
Well, I get the ROI, and I want to unpack that for commercial buildings. That you have employers that are saying we want to attract quality commercial tenants, and they can attract quality talent to show up in a healthy workspace, and it's got biophilic lighting, and it's got organic food, and it's got the like filters and all that kind of stuff, so that ultimately they think that's going to make a happier, healthier, more productive worker.
Yeah.
But it's not too much of a leap to say, whenever they go home, they're still exposed. Like, if they don't have a healthy home, it undermines the productivity that they're really looking for. There's so much velocity that goes on within commercial real estate of money that, like, these buildings are being held 5 to 10 years, and the job is to increase the NOI, to increase the value of the building. And what's that next amenity? So I wonder when we can make that jump into, well, how do we push for healthier homes if it really is about productivity and about people's health?
Yeah, great point, Neil. So that's exactly what I'm hoping for. So the stats already show that the younger generation, especially post-COVID, are looking for more sustainable, healthier, better for you products. We're talking about food and drink, even like the alcohol scene moving more to non-alc cocktails. It's really growing heavily. I'm looking for a confluence of those factors, with people going to the workplace and being more cognizant. Oh, my employer put air filtration systems in. I actually feel comfortable. I feel better. I'm getting sick less than I was before. And then all of those factors translating to the home when we're out in the market saying, wow, yeah, I spend even more time at home than the office. So I should get my home optimized for indoor environmental quality. So if it's a confluence of factors that drive that market, I would be very, very happy, but it's very early, so we don't know how that's going to play out.
Well, a global pandemic certainly doesn't hurt the confluence of people thinking about the healthy home. Somebody called a teammate of mine, David Todd out of New York. He said, look, if a reporter or somebody wants to know what we think about the future of commercial real estate. I'm like, that it's not really my area of expertise. I have no idea what's going to happen with all these skyscrapers that are at 50% occupancy. We have now remote workers across the globe spending more time at home and trying to figure out how to make this balance work, and shifting of skyscrapers and metropolitan areas towards home offices. And I know more than anybody what we had virus after virus roll through our son's school this year. And whenever that impacts the parents, you're out for like 2 weeks.
Totally.
I know the productivity on a very intimate level of what it means to have viruses coming in the house, and how Like I love geeking out on that building science of like what's the right ratio of humidity to where it's antiviral and antifungal and like that 40 to 60% range, and find like there's just so much education that the real estate community in general needs to provide its clients, from the design to the transaction to the inspection, to say, okay, this is a multi-pronged approach that actually is pretty complex. So, an operating system would be a really helpful dashboard to understand how we can make sense of that complexity and learn quicker over time. Uh,
Exactly. Exactly.
to then like make good decisions on like what's the appropriate technology that we need in a world that is changing outside, that impacts our indoor air quality and things, and water quality and things like that.
Although the structure, the bones and the walls are not living tissue like you and me, more and more I'm seeing architects, designers, technologists thinking of our indoor spaces as living systems. And that's what regenerative real estate is, right? So if we're taking care of our body, but it's within a space, we have to have the living system extend beyond our bodies for us to optimize it for our health, right? There's no other way, right? So architects, I'm part of a group called Science and Design Summit. If you go to scienceanddesignsummit.com, some very well-renowned architects, educators, researchers in higher academia really focused on neuroscience, the impact of architecture on our health and well-being, cognitive science, cognitive architecture. So all of that has to do with dealing with our houses and buildings as living systems. And so our Healthy Home OS is the technological design within that scope. And there's a great book by one of the fellow faculty members in the Science and Design Summit, Susan Magnuson. She's the head of the Brain Institute at Johns Hopkins University. I think the book is called Brain on Art. So art, things like biophilic design, not only art, but biophilic design, when we have scenes of nature, and we have, even if it's an image like this, when you look at it, the impact it has on the brain and your well-being, right? And the last couple of years it's been even more studies on this topic. So when it comes to regenerative real estate, it's very complex, so many things, but I'm so happy to see groups of people that are involved in building a home or a building, like architects, designers, technologists, all coming together to address an issue that deals with the human condition as they function within these spaces, right? So I'm really excited about being part of like that group and being the technology side within that.
Mm. This is great, Michael. It really gives me hope. I guess that's the best word. That, I look around and we're largely in a 20th century world, especially as we look at real estate. Like we are living and producing and building buildings that are going to be around for hundreds of years. And what we know has a lot of it, the large majority of it has already been built, and there's a segment of what will be that we're tasked with building right now that's going to endure for the next couple hundred years. So these are the things that I think we have to, as a responsibility towards ourselves and towards our children and towards the environment, to say, okay, what we cannot think that our current state is going to be forever. And if we think that where we are now is the epitome of a healthy indoor environment or a healthy outdoor environment, then we've got to like go back to square one and start over with more basic understanding of where we are at. So I think it's fascinating how you're really blending your two companies and two disciplines around regenerative agriculture and regenerative technology as it relates to healthy homes. Yeah, what's the ask that you think, like, what do you need right now? If you've got a microphone and you've got these budding companies. Like what would you love to see if things were to go right? What are those building blocks for you to get to that next level with these companies?
So I believe we have something of great value. It's just not many people know about it. So it's really about advocacy, right? If anyone is listening, so whatever we do, it has to be a net positive for human health. Whether we're drinking our teas versus a soda, it's going to be a net positive for your health, right? The healthy home operating system, with it, it's going to be a net positive for our health because all those metrics of air quality, water quality, they're going to be conducive to elevating our health. The other component has to be good for the planet, reducing our carbon footprint. Regenerative agriculture, like for our teas, for every kilogram of tea produced, it sequesters 380 kilograms of carbon from the air. So I always say our teas are reversing climate change. Like it may sound like a tagline or something, but we're going to do more and more studies that are like really drilling down to the very accurate levels on what that is. That was just a model that was done. But think about it, 400 times what in terms of the tea being produced, the carbon is being sunk into the ground. So it's reversing climate change, good for the climate. A home, we waste so much energy. So we have smart home technology where when no one's home, you don't need anything to run, even your air quality systems, right? And then when you're close to home, everything kicks on. So when you come into the home, the air quality is pristine, everything is pristine. Then we're reducing our carbon footprint in that respect. So good for people, good for the planet. And like you said, the most important thing is the very definition of sustainability is meeting the needs of future generations, right? So they can meet their needs, right? But we're on pace to not meet those, not meet the needs of the future generation. So we have to regenerate. Whether it's agriculture or real estate or anything else, we have to be a net positive. And in the beginning, for people that understand that, all I ask is, please support us. Please talk about us, advocate for us. And we want to keep doing that work, right?
And this gets us back beautifully into, and I'm standing on the shoulders of giants that have come before us on this podcast, that regeneration is the thinking technology. And it's a process of how do we make these mental decisions based on intuition. So yeah, this is amazing for everybody. Check out RePure and Wild Orchard Teas. We'll be sure to link that in the show notes to what you're doing. Michael, this is a real pleasure, and I really wish you all the best going forward as well.
Thanks so much. I really enjoyed our conversation and hope to meet up with you next time in Vancouver. Let's meet up there, or I can come down to Whitby.
Yeah, definitely.
If you want to follow our work at Latitude, you can follow us on Instagram at latitude.regenerative.re, and mine is at I am Neil Collins. We inherently believe in the potential that comes from connecting value-aligned and purpose-driven people together in community. That's why I encourage you to join our mighty network and introduce yourself to the other people working across the globe to advance a more regenerative, resilient, and beautiful world. Here, we want to know what you're working on and what inspires you. Through this platform, you can attend live events, take courses provided by our podcast guests, and create connection with other people and businesses that share your same passion. To join, find the link in our show notes or visit our website at chooselatitude.com. If you'd like to support the show, please share it with your friends and be sure to follow us on your podcast app so that you always have the latest episode downloaded. Another way to support our regenerative field building is to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Positive ratings help attract amazing guests, and they can be the deciding factor for someone else to tune in and listen. And who knows, Maybe this is the kind of motivation that it takes for them to finally decide to align their profession with their sustainable and regenerative values and become a positive force for good within their own community. This show was produced by myself and edited by Anthony Wallace and offered as a part of our work with Latitude Regenerative Real Estate.